How did this Pontiac Tempest become home for two struggling sisters? The story beneath the rust. The Price sisters, some people might have called them peculiar, but they had a Pontiac and they got a story. Sad story started because their house fell in. The sisters didn't know how to maintain the home after both their parents passed away. Let's hear from Stan Moss, local historian and Pinson resident.
Verna May and Ella Louise, you know, we like those double names in the South. And their mom is buried beside them, Lida Price. Lida Bell, I've been told, and up to a few graves up is their father. Why their father's not buried next to him, I do not know, but he was ornery from what I've understood, so that may be why.
Louise and Verna were childlike. It's not their fault. Their mom and dad are very protective, especially their dad. Their father's name was Addie Price. He didn't like the girls to leave the yard unless they were going to church. He was a stern man, but he'd argue with the fence post to prove he was right. Addie did not allow his daughters the opportunity to learn to drive. If he couldn't take them, they had to walk or ride the bus. Well, their father died in December 1963. Verna, the younger of the two sisters by a year, took driving lessons after her father passed away. She took ownership of a 1966 Pontiac Tempest. She was 29 years old. The car was purchased at Doug Willie Pontiac in Birmingham, Alabama, in late 1965. It was reefed turquoise in color. It was a four-door sedan. It had turquoise seats inside. I'd call it budget-minded Pontiac. It was cheap. It was bare bones. No power steering, no power brakes, no air conditioning. It had rubber floor mats, no carpet, a column shift automatic transmission, and a 326 cubic inch V8. The AM radio was the only extra cost item. Verna and Louise took care of their mom, Lida, after their father died. Lida was the complete opposite of Addie. She was sweet to a fault. Mother was the glue that held the small family together for about 16 years until she became ill and passed away in 1979. The sisters, then in their 40s, survived on the generosity of a local church, and neighbors left food for them. The future was uncertain, and they fell back to what their daddy taught them: trust no one and stay close to the yard. They did just that. The sisters seldom strayed far from the yard, but when they go outside, they tend to tie the empty bread wrappers, pie tins, just about all the trash they discarded from the donated food items. You could find it in the hedgerow that separated their yard from the neighbor's yard. Passers-by thought it was odd.
That far, thinking if somebody came in and came back there bothering them, trying to bother them, they'd run into that and sound an alarm or sort. They could hear or see anybody that might come up and approach them. They took turns staying in the car, one at a time, went on 24/7.
As a neighborhood kid who grew up in Pinson in the 1980s, I encountered the mysterious trash dangling in the shrubs, never knowing the source. The inseparable sisters continued to have tea parties with their childhood dolls under the shade just in front of the garage. That was kind of odd for women in their 40s and 50s. Several decades of neighborhood children on Walnut Street grew up wary of the unusual sisters. Rumors created by children and adults are often unkind when they don't understand the circumstances. Some speculated that the sisters were suffering from hallucinations or schizophrenia. Whatever the reasons, Price sisters closed themselves off from everyone. Their peculiar ways were known among the locals in Pinson. Some said they saw them cutting grass in the yard with scissors. The women wore long, outdated clothes from the late 1950s and 60s and walked to the store. Many saw them wearing heavy coats to the grocery store in the middle of summer. One heavy coat is an alarming sight. Two is unheard of. With little money to spend on anything but the primary necessity of food, everything else suffered. The last tag sticker bought for the Tempest was 1986. For nearly 2 decades after their mother passed away, the Price sisters survived without guidance on the upkeep and maintenance of a home. In 1997, that's when things changed because the sisters had no choice. Check from the local church stopped coming. They had to find help. Their house had fell in and their world had fallen apart. Louise Price kind of took care of everything between the two sisters. She took it upon herself to walk to the preacher's house. He was the man in charge of the First Baptist Church of Pinson and would have an answer. "Why did we stop getting our check?" Louise Price asked him. Brother Gary Fisher was surprised to see one of the Price sisters at his door. The sisters had not set foot in the church in many, many years, never under his tenure, which was quite a while. "We'll straighten this out and get you some help," said Fisher. It didn't take long for Fisher to understand the dire situation of the Price sisters. He was ready to do anything to help and knew he would have the full support from his congregation. The sisters, after a brief stay at Bryce Hospital in Tuscaloosa and a mental health evaluation, were moved to a rental house near their old home place. In 1999, the church built the Price sisters a new house to live in on the same property with the little white garage and the green Pontiac Tempest. Louise and Verna Price lived together in the new house for many years. The Pontiac stayed in the garage. As I think back on the history of the car and the story behind it, I was most interested in preserving the story of how the Price sisters, two strong-willed women, survived using everything available, including their 1966 Pontiac as a makeshift home. Their church, neighbors, and larger community stepped up to help them when they needed it most. Verna Price passed away in November of 2012 at 75. Ella Louise Price passed away 9 months later in August of 2013 at 77. The property, including the home and Pontiac, were sold in 2014. Well, these two stories are few and far between with a happy ending, but it's good to look back on the good people of Pinson, Alabama, and the sisters who loved their Pontiac. It kept them safe from the storm that surrounded them when their house fell in. I'm guessing, judging by the contents of the car, the blankets, and the worn places in the seats, they spent many hours seeking shelter inside that Pontiac, inside the little garage behind their house. The four-door green Tempest from Pinson, Alabama, and the Price sisters. If you're ever in the neighborhood, take a ride down Walnut Street, just down there on the right.
The legendary Price sisters is their family plot behind the iron wrought fence. And this cemetery is filled with so many interesting characters. I think they were each other's best friend. And they'd probably always been each other's best friend.